your good health. We're not advertising drink as such on tangents. We're talking about wine. An awful lot of wine is being drunk in Ireland, more than ever there was before. As a proportion of how much is drunk in Ireland, wine has gone up considerably. For instance, there are about 150 different varieties of wine on sale. We spend about £2 million a year on wine. So we thought we'd try and give you an idea about, if you're going to spend that much money, collectively, what you should spend it on. What's good wine, what's not good wine, what's value and what's not good value, since you're spending that kind of money anyway. And there are many wine merchants. We picked one of them, Mitchell's, and we have an expert with us, TP Whelehan, to walk us through the wine scene. Tommy, can I move over there and start with the most expensive ones?
Right. This is a good point to start, actually, John, because in fact the most expensive is not necessarily the best, and it's not necessarily the best value for money. This is a wine, of course, from a very important Chateau Pontecane. Production is very, very limited. The affluent and ever-thirsty world are sort of chasing these finer wines, whether they're drinking them because they know the difference or whether they're drinking intrinsic values, labels, status symbols or what, I don't know.
That's important, isn't it, though? I mean, people do put a wine on the table because of the label,
I think
to impress the boss's wife or whatever.
This is true. If you want to drink intrinsic values, then you probably would buy a bottle like that. But if you consider that same wine, which is now £3, in more recent vintages, it will probably cost £5 to £6. That means in a year or two you'll be paying for a more current vintage up to double that price, which is about 4 times what it was 6 years ago. It's hard to say that it offers the punter value for money, because really that's what it boils down to for the average or daily wine drinker rather than the special occasions wine drinker.
Well, now, part of the interest, I know, would be, of the viewers out there, would certainly be to know what sort of range there is. I said when I was introducing the item that there was 150 different kinds and they spent an awful lot of money. Now, 150 different kinds of wine is an awful lot of kinds of wine. Can you tell people what the range is?
John, I think we can simplify that one, because in fact, while I might say there are 150 different labels on the shelf, there are basically only 3 types of wine.
Right. So what are they then?
Red, white and rosé.
Red, white and halfway.
That's right, halfway. Right. The compromise wine.
Oh, well, now, there are different kinds of red and there are different kinds of white.
Yes,
Tell us about
they can be more full-bodied than it seems to me.
What does full-bodied mean now? Because full-bodied to the viewer means somebody like me.
Yes. Well, let's say a wine that fills the mouth rather than something that's light. It's a difficult thing to explain. It refers to the concentration of flavour and the alcohol content more than anything else. You can get it down to a very, very light, dry white wine, red wines. Equally, in the white wines, you can go from bone dry acid up to rich and luscious and very, very sweet indeed. And this is why I think wine has an advantage over any other beverage, that it's got this
variety within the kind of drink you're taking.
That's right. So people really have got to initially experiment. And this is the advantage that wine has over any other beverage.
Can we move
this choice? Yeah.
Tom, can we move over to this lot here, which are not so? We're left the £3 to £5 lot.
Yeah. So we're talking about claret here, essentially.
Can we go through these?
Yeah. Well, these wines here, I think, would sell at about £1.50 for a bottle. This is a magnum size, incidentally, which is a double bottle. This is a half bottle. It would run at about £1.50 as against £3 here for a bottle.
Can I ask you about sizes? Is every bottle, has it got the same amount of wine?
This is an important point, actually. I think the public in general should examine their bottle before they buy it, or inquire off the restaurant or off license what the contents of a bottle are, because there are quite a number of gimmicky bottles on the market, which in fact...
Because one of our crew members was asking me beforehand to ask you, was the shape of the bottle important, and was that what you were paying for?
No, I wouldn't say you're paying for the shape of the bottle. In fact, a great percentage of what you're paying is duty, freight, insurance and bottling charges. In fact, in this context, you could take a bottle of wine retailing at £1 a bottle. The actual producer would get around 30p for that. You could take a bottle of wine at 65p a bottle, and the actual producer gets about 10p a bottle.
Tom, all right, we've been talking in general about this middle range of wine. Now, could you tell people who want to buy a bottle or so of this, could you recommend how they would go about buying wine at about that price, $1.50?
Yes. Well, certainly the first thing, John, we've got to establish is what sort of wine you like and what sort of an occasion it is. I think if you're just drinking wine on its own, you want something light, fresh, and fruity, like a Beaujolais here, or perhaps an Italian Valpolicella, which is also light, bland, easy to drink, not too acid, not too astringent. In fact, very much a beginner's wine at around about £1 a bottle, in that bracket anyway.
An Italian red wine at about £1 a bottle.
Valpolicella, Bardolino is another one, good name from all from Verona, or the old and ever reliable Beaujolais, which everybody seems to know and loves pronouncing. It's got a nice ring about it, pleasant. For something really rich and full-bodied, and I think this is a wine that's very, very appropriate for the Irish scene, and that's the Chateauneuf de Pape. It's probably one of the most full-bodied wines from France.
People would be fairly familiar with that name too, I think.
The name is a good name. I think it's got all the right connotations for Ireland.
Yes, indeed.
But it's absolutely splendid and ideal for cold weather. We'll go with turkey and a big...
And the leftover ham as well. What about this white, laddie?
Well, this white is rather good for those, again, who like the full-bodied white wine, and yet it's absolutely dry. This is from Alsace, and it's one of the few regions in France that hasn't escalated its prices out of all proportion and still offers very good value for money.
On that point, Tom, I presume that the most wines that have got expensive are because people have heard so much about them, they're being bought a lot, and that there's actually wine on the market which might be better.
Indeed, this is true. We've had a number of factors. First of all, this explosion in wine on an international basis. America imported 40% more last year. The Japanese are going wild about wine, discovering it, buying vineyards, paying enormous prices at Christie's. And it's a law of supply and demand. There's only so much wine produced in these various regions, and as demand increases, the price goes up, of course. Like everything else. Also speculation, enormous speculation in wine too, by people who are getting out of paper and into wine as an investment. This has had its effect on escalating cost of production too.
Can we move over to these newer ones? They're not necessarily cheaper. They're new on the Irish market. Yes. I see two Chilean.
There's some from Chile there. Right. There's some from Spain, from the best district in Spain, the Rioja district, and in fact there's some from Portugal that I've seen on the market too. This is an interesting development, and of course it's a wine merchant's reaction to the prices which French wines are commanding now. We just can't afford to pay £3 and £4 and £5 a bottle for wines here.
Well, it doesn't mean that these aren't as good.
In fact, some of them taste better than wines at 3 times the price, in my opinion.
We want to get that on the record from the punters.
Value for money, if value for money is the objective, this is the wine merchant playing his real role and going out and finding wines from other regions. The tragedy is, of course, the names are not known. The consumer will have to find his way through them. Where the old Beaune, Beaujolais, Nuit Saint George, everybody knows about them, or at least has heard of them anyway.
But if he's offered a wine from Chile or Spain or Portugal, it could be just as good.
Well, indeed, the Chilean wine industry was set up by French people. French people were imported, French vines were imported. The better region of Chile is using the classic French grapes. And also, Chilean government regulation, which constricts production to curb alcoholism, actually, means that the wine is of superior quality. In other words, by strong pruning, keeping down production, you improve the quality of the wine.
Well, on that note, Tommy, discouraging alcoholism.
Yes.
And encouraging taste.
And improving quality.
And improving quality.
That's something we could all drink to.
Indeed.